Welcome everyone to this artist talk. My name is Liv Brissach. I'm a curator at Nordnorsk Kunstmuseum, Northern Norwegian Art Museum, Davinorka Museum. And today we're here with Maritea Dæhlin, who opened her first solo exhibition here at Nordover last night. And today is the official first day of a quite long run for this exhibition, which will be up here for about 6-7 months. Then it will tour to Oslo Kunstforening and Nordnorsk Kunstmuseum in Bodø, both opening in September of 2026. So we're really excited about the really long life of this exhibition. And just some practical information first. We will do a little dive into Maritea's practice now for about 30 minutes. And then we will be joined by a special guest, artist Bianca Hisse, who is currently in residence at Artica Svalbard and who has known Maritea for a while. So we're really excited about that in about half an hour. And I will introduce her then. So, Maritea Dæhlin is an interdisciplinary artist raised between Mexico and Norway with second-generation Bamileke heritage from Cameroon. Her dynamic upbringing, navigating diverse cultures and languages, deeply influences her creative practice, providing a foundation for exploring themes of identity, multilingualism, and shifting perspectives. Dæhlin's work spans video, sound, performance, photography, and text, and her practice challenges boundaries, inviting audiences to engage with non-linear narratives and complex identities. She was a resident at Artica Svalbard in 2023, nominated by Nordnorsk Kunstmuseum. And we're thrilled that you're all here for this event and the exhibition. Let's start by situating ourselves here, maybe, because Longyearbyen is a particular place, and we're here now, so let's start there. And I can start by saying that I very much feel like a guest here in Longyearbyen, and I've only really been to the valley going in between here and Nybyen. And then I've been here at Nordover, so it's a really particular site that I've spent quite a few hours at. And it's interesting to be a guest because on whose territory am I a guest? Who's native to here and who lives here? Those are some questions I have about situating myself here.
Yeah, should I?
Yeah.
So hello, also thank you so much for being here and for coming again. I think a lot of you were here yesterday. But yeah, I also feel definitely a guest. It's my third time here, and I'm for every time I come, I feel very at home here also. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you've worked with specific sites here in Afisa, the 3-channel video installation, which is central to this exhibition. And then you've also worked with a particular site with a lot of importance to you in San Cristobal in Chiapas and in Mexico. So maybe you could talk a little bit about those two sites, how you chose them and how you engaged with them. Because I think it's quite you see it in the videos that there's a particular care and humility in approaching those sites.
I think for San Cristobal is where I'm also brought up, so that is home that's kind of where I spent most of my childhood. But it has also a lot of parallels with Svalbard in some way that I sensed, and one of them is this kind of sites that if you're not from there or don't know them too much, they're very exotic, very beautiful, very exotic. So then also as an artist, like when I was first invited to Artica in 2023, I also feel that it's a big challenge to create work in this kind of place, because when you come from the outside, you can turn around anywhere and it's beautiful and it's impressive and you can make something beautiful, and that can also make you do exactly the same work as anyone else that comes here will do, because you feel you're kind of discovering something. And then I think that's thinking from the perspective of Mexico, that is a country that has like a long colonial history, is very problematic, this idea of coming and discovering, you know. And so also there in Mexico, I also seen a lot how the artists that come from outside, they come, they discover, and they discover exactly the same thing as everyone else that comes and feels they discovered something. So that was kind of one of the things when I came. Like the importance for me when I came for the residency is that I didn't have to produce anything. So to be able to be in a place like this and just observe and be, you know, but then what I realized afterwards is that I did produce a lot of work, but I didn't even notice it myself. So it's kind of this kind of place that you can allow yourself to be, and then it will have a lot of repercussions for later, in a way. So that's one of the parallels I felt like is how do you create work in this kind of place that is so impressive? And so for me, it was very clear when I was then invited to do the exhibition. I knew I wanted it to do it between these two locations. That was very clear, like Svalbard and Mexico, that represents, in some sense, this very different but also very complementary places, also in terms of colors, of nature, of culture. Like they're so different but also complement. And that's the same I feel with this north-south. Like when you're brought up between these places, it becomes like a whole in some way. But also with this idea of discovering, I worked in a very small area, both places. So in Mexico, it's a garden. It's one small garden, and you don't see almost anything else of where this is, apart from one shot. That's when we are taken out from the garden. And the same here. It's a very small area that anyone can access. You know, like it's just down there, just down from Arctica, down to see where the bonfire is. You know, it's this small area, and of course it's this. Oh, but we should go out and film more because there's so many amazing places we can go. And it's like, no, we're just gonna be in this small area because I'm not from here. I don't know this place. I don't need to discover it all. But what happens if I spend 2 weeks, whatever, daily in this small area? You know, and then, so that was kind of the approach.
Yeah, and the garden in San Cristobal, you obviously knew really well from before. Yeah. I wanted to zoom out a little bit to talk about your background in theater, stage productions, and performance. Because this is your first solo exhibition, but you've produced numerous things in your own name before. So perhaps we should start by talking about a production called Sleep Locks the Bones, which premiered between Black Box Theatre and Kunstnernes Hus, the artist's house, both in Oslo, in 2024. Yeah, and which will be presented again in Bergen and Oslo later this fall. And some of the script for that was developed while you were in residence here, right? Yes. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's part of as I said, I was here kind of not expecting to produce anything, but just being. And also I was here with my family, so it was very and we're doing homeschooling when we were here. So I felt it was very kind of unproductive in the sense, because I didn't have to be productive. But I was also writing, but more this I didn't even think about I was doing it. I was just writing a lot. And we came here, it was February and March, so it was to experience from the dark to when the light comes. So we were also here when the sun came back and the blue season. So, and all that writing, when I came back home to Oslo, I discovered that there was a lot of material there. And I was reading a lot, also doing a lot of research, and that project was about also slowness and sleep and dreams. And I think for me, also being in the dark season and here, also make something with your rhythm, you know, your daily rhythm, but also your internal rhythm and your sleep. So So a lot of the text that later became part of this, I call it a sound installation or a sound performance, where people lay down. So you lay down, there are 10 beds and people will come in, they will lay down and you will get into, so it's a very warm, kind of very comfortable experience for the body. But the voice you will hear and the text that is also mixing languages, it also has this uncomfortableness of, that has to do with sleep or rest, and that is not just joyous, it's also anxiety, there is trauma, there is, not everyone can just rest. So, yeah. But then also with the blue, the darkness, the sleep, the presence also you feel here by knowing that I've never seen a polar bear, but this idea, what does it do to you to know there could potentially be something? That also I feel is a parallel to like Mexico, where it's a different kind of danger, but you feel, even if you don't experience in the darkness or walking outside, you feel the presence of something that could potentially be threatening. So, and of course here also this, but is it, I am scared, but actually, if you think it very clear with the polar bear, like we are the ones that are the dangerous, so yeah. So all that became very important for that project.
Mm-hmm. And when I went to experience it, I remember it was, we were a small group and we were kind of introduced to the whole experience by you. And also we had a little moment together. We were kind of strangers to each other, the audience members. And we had this moment where we made a little puzzle, jigsaw puzzle, like the one over there, just to kind of prime the audience. And then we walked together into this black box and laid down in beds next to each other. And afterwards as well, this particular work of yours has channeled some conversations that I'd never had with people about the kinds of thoughts you have, and the fast-paced thoughts that can occur as you're trying to fall asleep, and also about sleep paralysis. And I don't know if it's intended with the title to make you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, you can call it sleep paralysis, and also in Mexico it's for like, I forgot, but like when the death comes on you, so it's so often seen as this presence that can come on you and that maybe you can't move your body. So it's playing a bit with that. The sleep locks the bones, but and also I guess this for the audience to potentially get into a state. I think also I try, of course, in a very different way in this work, but how to also be a bit in charge of the state that the audience potentially can get into when experiencing the work. So that's the second work I did where people can get into a state of, it depends for each audience, but potentially you can be in between awake and asleep. So some people fall asleep every time, like very deeply, and they're snoring, and at the end you have to go and like at the end, at some point you have to ask them to leave. But and the funny thing, just a little fun fact, is that always it's like grown-up people, I will be like, I wasn't sleeping. I'm like, it's okay, you can sleep. I mean, it's fine, you can sleep. But also, and for some, of course, it can be the opposite. You can be very alert. But for me, it's very interesting when you are in between. Because then I think it's when you are in this state a bit in between, and then also maybe it's a different part of you that has to open, and that has to where you can perceive the work and the art. Like often in art, like we're just walking past. But what happens if you are in a state? And that's also why this part you mentioned, like of gathering first, maybe doing the puzzle, having some tea, like kind of getting the energy in the right place, and then we go into the work. So in a different way than in the exhibition, but I think also with the video, it is considered, how is the body? Like you could sit, you could stand, you can lay down, you could move around like in the area. You can hopefully also get into this zone where you maybe perceive it not just from the very rational mind. So that's something I'm interested in.
Yeah, it's something you've been exploring in quite a few ways. I'm also thinking about the project you did called I Guess You Have a Lot of Questions, a bedtime story, which was an experience, an individual experience actually in hotel rooms through the night, with this kind of 8-hour-long soundtrack, and you were instructed to either listen to it or sleep through it, or drift in and out of sleep, and to kind of explore that place of listening from an in-between state. And that's actually also how we started working together, because this was a commissioned work for Actions of Art and Solidarity, an exhibition that was up at Kunstnernes Hus, the Artist's House in Oslo, Norway, in
2021.
Yeah, January 2021. It opened.
Through Oka.
Yeah, it was commissioned by Oka, where I worked at the time. Yeah, and it's really interesting to see how these states of rest are explored in your various projects, also in this one, which I think we'll talk a little bit more about later with Bianca as well. But on the topic of titles, this exhibition is called Afisa, but it might not be tomorrow. And I think many people are curious about that title and what it means to you, and the kinds of stories that you've been working with through the production of this work.
Yeah, I'll try. I think also something that has been present in a lot of my work. I mean, in this one is the one that, in a way, has the less text, even there is text work in it. But I'm very interested in language. So I guess the same as this with the sleep or not, it's how to access different modes of perceiving. I think also language, in both these works we have mentioned now, they mix various languages, like Norwegian, English, Spanish, and I guess also Ayuk, a local language, an indigenous language from Mexico. And when you have many languages, you have to, depending on what language you speak or understand, you will perceive a different thing, and also to challenge this notion of who is it that has access usually to all languages in a place, who is used to not understanding. That's something I'm very interested in. And Afisa again is my entry to it, from also because a lot of power in knowing a language and owning a language. So also what happens with those languages, not just language, but also this everything that we carry that we maybe don't have access to. So in the sense of, for me, being also from Cameroon and being, my family's, my father is from Cameroon. So it's not even a long path to this and to the Bamileke culture, but I don't know the language Medumba that my family speak. But when I was there, when I was 12, I learned some words, but I've forgotten. So Afisa is my try to Afisa, and some other words you will hear in the video, my try to enter and that language, but it might be wrong. So Afisa might not be a word that exists in Medumba. So it's me with the memory I can access. And I think that's also something when you are... the only thing I can do is either to block it out and to not enter that part of me, or I have to try. But then I have to try and make mistakes, So then it's and in the video, so the video is called Only Afisa, this word, but and the exhibition is also, but it might not be tomorrow. So that's a sentence that you will see in the video, and that was also in a previous, quite a few of the texts in this exhibition has been part of a previous performance called Originally a Plant. So also the poems you can see on the mirrors. There is also another audio work. So a lot of the things you see, I also trace back to other works that I've been before. So in order for me to connect with this part of me, and it's been symbolized for me with my great-grandmother in Cameroon that I never met, and she's passed away many, many years ago. So in order for me to connect with her, it's a lot of freedom in us connecting. And then I allowed her, and you can call this whatever you want, you can call it, I'm not interested in defining it, but by allowing her to speak through me is this text to see at the end of the video. So she says, you have to stop. If you are moving around, I can't find you. So I have to trust I will be the one finding you, But then you have to, if you are moving, I can't find you. But if you stand still, then maybe I can find you. And if you try to say some words, So just try. I know you forgot the language, but if you try, then maybe I can hear you and it will be easier for me to find you. And then Afi said, oh, Anjiga, this is my try, I'm trying. And she says, yes, you say it wrong, but that's fine. It will come back to you. And even it's longer. Also, she at one point, you also knew how to say I love you, but you forgot, And even my own name, I forgot how to say. So, but she also says very clearly, like, I will be the one finding you, but it might not be tomorrow. No, and it might not be the day after tomorrow, or the after tomorrow. But you have to trust that I will be the one finding you. So that's the title.
And I'm thinking it connects with the sort of complex identities, different geographies all over the world with various important experiences that go into what it means to be part of the African diaspora. And in particular in the video work, there's a couple of scenes where this, I mean, it's all over, but there's a couple of scenes I wanted to talk to you about. There's one where you're sitting alone and just looking out here at the, I think you're looking towards the southwest. So it's the Greenland Sea, which obviously connects with the North Atlantic. And then there's the other scene where the artist Rafiki is braiding your hair. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about those two.
Yeah. I mean, I can talk about it from this sense of this I'm saying of the not searching. I think it's in a lot of being from the diaspora, and I guess for all of us, especially in this place, we all come also from other places, no? So I think this search can also become for anything, can become very forced, so what happens if we allow it to come? So that's a bit how it's been for me, for example, both with Rafiki and the sea. I'll explain how, to simply be there at that location. So it's not like, oh, I will choose this location that is in front of the sea and that will represent this and that, but all that comes by being there. So for me, by just being when we were filming, and then it starts making sense whilst I was there and just looking out and knowing that the great-grandmother in some sense, and I'm not, when I say the great-grandmother, it's not too important for me that if it's, this is my own personal story or not, but whatever she represents, and being in front of this sea and connecting, it doesn't matter where I am, that I'm in front of this water. And there's also this thinker from Martinique, Lisanne, he talks a lot about, also in terms of, that is not part of my history, but for a lot of the Black communities in Latin America, in the US, that have a connection through the sea and through slavery, where are your roots, no? And this idea of roots in the water, roots that are fluid, roots that are in continuous movement. So I think just being there, looking out at the water and knowing our roots are actually, they are floating around. And then last year, Rafiki gave me a gift. So Rafiki is also a friend, she's a colleague, she's an artist, she's from Norway, from Congo. She's also been a resident at Arctica, and she offered me a gift that was to braid my hair. So when I was 12 and she didn't know this story, but when I was in Cameroon and I was 12, I got my hair braided, and I never got it again in that way since being there. So when receiving her gift, it made a lot of sense. It had to be here, So to get my hair braided by her is also a passing of knowledge, and my daughter being around, both my children, this knowledge I didn't learn. My hands didn't learn them. My family knew it, but she's helping me. She's passing it on to me. And maybe one day I can pass it on. Or maybe not, but at least it's something. What happens if this action also happens here at Svalbard? It's not something I see a lot present here also. So that's another question. But yeah, so I don't see a lot of these histories and this presence and these bodies as mine here. So it's all something I'm questioning also a lot. It's very international, it's all that, but I don't see me. I don't see my children here. So, but all these questions come from the action of what you see in the work that we were there, So I will finish my thread of thought there.
And before we invite Bianca to join us, I just wanted to ask you one final question, which kind of ties in with the previous one, about the process of making these new works and the collaborations that have gone into that. Rafiki being one, and then you've had conversations with people here and people in San Cristobal in Mexico, and a pretty large team working with you. And is there one story that you want to bring out from this production period?
Let me think. Maybe I can say these conversations that I've had along the way and how important they are, like both with everyone involved in the team and all the interviews I had, and then this process of what's in the work at the end and what's not. Like, I think that's a very interesting one to me, like how all the conversation you need to have and all the reading and all that in order to make a piece of work, and what happens if it's included or not included in the work, or how much of it is. So like with like Rafiki, you see the braiding, you can hear a sense of some conversations, but that's all, you know, but it's still there in some way. And maybe if you had heard the whole conversation, then maybe you can understand more by it, by seeing these small snippets, than if I had shown you the whole. Because then also we would have too many answers to look at the work. So that's also something I think you don't need too many. I hope you don't need too many answers to look at my work. And if you get them, then it might even take away some of the essence of it. So like also with Jenny, that's also visible in the video, doing like a cleansing of energy from in San Cristobal. That is also a very long journey to get to the point of being able to film a hand, you know, to film two hands. That's a very big act of trust that she allowed me to do that many people have wanted to do before. So it's also all this trust that has to be built in order even to get to those hands. And what those hands have meant, with all this I'm speaking with the great grandmother, actually have her following this journey. Like I spoke with her recently, just before coming here, also like how, and so I just want to acknowledge that. The same with Mev. So you also see in the work that's also Afro-Mexican cinema maker. Like these conversations had from very different angles, because they are from very different perspectives in very different parts of the world. And with Sam that is here too, have been so important. And of course also, I mean, everyone in the team, but I would like also to acknowledge my daughter. That is such a big part of this work. No? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe one final question about your daughter, because it's so central. What has it meant to work with her, and how has she kind of, what decisions have she made? Yeah,
no, she's had a very clear decision. She's part because that she wanted to be part, you know, like it's, she wanted to be part, and also she was painting herself this way. So I was looking at it and I was like, wow, what is this? You know, like, and I'm always painting I was always doing this, painting myself, putting clay in my face, that putting different elements for many years now. And I never thought of it as a thing I do in my work. It's just something I do. And I can see, oh, she's doing this. And then she had this, I was like, wow, what is this? So I asked, like, would you like to do it also now with me in this work? And she was like, yes, like, and she's been so clear. So it's also and she, you know, she puts very, like, it has to be these colors, it has to be like that. No, it can't be like that. You know, I also had ones where I was painted all in red. And then you see in one of the shots I have some yellow here. She was like, I will be part, but only if you're not completely red anymore. You know, she's, if not, I will not. So she's, I think it's been this, I have two children, and I know, and it's very this thing, like my son, he didn't want to be part, but he's been helping out so much behind the scene. So, but for her, for Nina, it's been like an important journey for us. She's been here helping mount exhibition. I think she has this, she's just part of it. And she's, it's just been beautiful. I can just say that also for us, for our relationship. It's tricky. I just want to say, like, I'm very, very aware. She's a child, you know, and when you make work now, it's photo, it's video, it's out, it's social media. I never post photos usually of my children. I'm very like, and then suddenly I'm doing this work, and some of my favorite parts of the work are her. And I'm like, oh, can I post it? Can I not? What's the responsibility? Will she like it later? And then also, it's a big subject, so I won't dive into that 100%, but I will say I trust this work, that it was important to create it. It was important for us. And she's painted, you know? So that's also, it's... you're seeing her through. There's still the mirror. You know, there's a protection. There's the mirror. There is the paint. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Having worked a little bit with Nina, because she's been here through the install period, which has lasted about a week. Every time I've asked her a question, it's never, I don't know.
No.
Always a lot of opinions.
Yeah. And she has one comment. She was like, yesterday people saw the video once. Like, you did so much work and they saw it once. So she's very like, so please come back. She was very like, and I said, people can come back. Yeah, because they only saw it once. And we worked very hard. So
that's true. Everyone is welcome to come numerous times.
More than once.
Yeah. Now we're going to invite Bianca Hisse to join us here in the sofa. And I'll introduce Bianca, although many of you know her from before. Bianca is a visual artist and choreographer based in Oslo. Her artistic practice investigates the way places are choreographed by social and political issues, employing performance as a tool for imagination and resistance. Blurring the boundaries between the visual arts and dance, her work sheds light on how the body can move against inflexible and oppressive systems, envisioning choreographies of collective freedom. She is a current resident at Artica Svalbard and was nominated by the Office for Contemporary Art Norway, OCA. So welcome, Bianca.
Thank you.
How long have you been here now?
In total, almost 2 months and one more to go. So, total of 3 months. And I'm together with my partner, Christian Danielewicz. So we are working together as a duo.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you would like, you're also welcome to kind of situate yourself here in Svalbard from your perspective and from your practice.
Yeah, no, first I just want to say thank you for this invitation. And it's always a very big pleasure to talk with Maritea about our works and your works together. I mean, we have met a couple of years ago, I think, in Oslo art scene, but also I have heard about Maritea's work before, and I was always like, there has always been this feeling that we had so many similarities and our works, they had so many intersections in different ways, even though they can be very different in results and outcomes. But like, there has always been some kind of dialogue there, which then later, like with time, we were able to develop that into talks and more like deeper discussions. So yeah, it's always very nice to have an opportunity to talk about our works. And yeah, here it's been great, strange, fascinating. It's like, Artica is such an incredible place to work at, and to have the freedom to, as you said, not have to produce something right away, but to have that time and that support to just, delve deep into your ideas. I think that's a real privilege that, not all residencies are like that. So yeah.
And while we prepared for this talk, both of you had quite interesting perspectives on kind of the imaginary of this place, produced by your own biases, but also produced by visual culture and history. And I find that particularly interesting from a museological perspective, when you think about the kind of collections, the history, the visuality of the Arctic, and what the types of imaginaries that those inform still today. So maybe both of you want to talk a little bit about imagining coming here and then actually coming here.
Yeah, I can start, and then also we talked a little bit about it, a couple of days ago, how even when you go to a place for the first time, and especially the Arctic, there are so many preconceptions and assumptions of what that place is, and what kind of artist comes here, what kind of art is made here, the aesthetics of a place that is so strongly attached to history and culture. So I think also being here, having this having this awareness and this consciousness that you are a part of it. You are contributing with whatever you do here to that culture. And what do you do then? So I think also what I've always admired a lot in your work is that how you are constantly challenging those definitions, like challenging what do you see, how you perceive something, how a body in a landscape is read and understood, and defined, and that those readings are always more complicated than they might seem on the first glance. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm still figuring it out also what it is to be here and what it is to make work here. Even though I have lived in the Arctic before, have studied in Tromsø, have been to Svalbard 3 times before this time. So it's not that it's my very first impression of a place, but still, I think, the longer you are in a place, the more you understand its complexities and nuances and how society and dynamics are playing out and constantly changing as well. Yeah, so I think it's just like a constant learning and work.
Yeah, and I think for me also it's been like a whole journey from also challenging, I said, my own internal preconception of coming to a place like this. I can say, like, when I was first invited for the residency, I was very kind of surprised. I was like, oh, but why would I be invited? Like, I didn't fit into the idea I thought like an institution would have for an artist that should come here. Like, I didn't, both because of, for many reasons, for the kind of work, for how I look, like how I define my work. And then it was kind of been a painful process because at some point I even felt like, oh, it's so brave. Not because just because that I was invited, but also for the others that were invited at the same time. To say it simple, we were like, no, I don't even want to mention it, but because of who was invited, they were all artists I admire and are amazing. I'm like, oh, but that's so brave to invite all of us without labeling us, the year of whatever, And then it would be quite a painful process for me to realize, like, that why do I feel that's brave? It should just be, it should be like, how do you say? What's the word? Like, it shouldn't be brave. It should just be like, yeah, of course. Like, why shouldn't also we be invited, So it's the same as anyone else could be invited that does work that, so for me to feel that internally I was surprised, and then to go through the whole process of doing this work and seeing work made by the other residents, especially this, to feel like, of course I could also be invited. I can do this exhibition, and it makes sense that I'm doing work in Svalbard. But I think this is something that I carry a lot from the context of living in Norway, but also and that's part of the conversation we had also in the project. The same with Mev in Mexico, being also Afro-Mexican. Like, when you fall into these labels, then it's always this like, why am I invited? Am I good enough? Is it to fit into like a discourse And of course, then you have the extra layer here that both being the foreigner or being black, but also being from Norway, being from Oslo. So it's all these thoughts inside of me, like, of what people could criticize from it. It can first be like, oh, why is she here? But then maybe the reason they will say why is like, oh, but she's from Oslo. And the same going to Northern Norway later. I'm like, oh, people will be like, why an artist from Oslo? Why, and then it's endless. It's endless. And it's so exhausting. But I can't explain you how exhausting it is, and how I see colleagues that are like native people in Mexico, I see people of color in Norway, like everywhere. People are getting sick. Artists that are doing amazing work are getting sick, because it's something you have to carry. Oh, I get the word because it is, and then it's never good enough. So I think for me, like this place, then to come to a place like Svalbard, because I was just explaining this a bit, but in a way here, why would you feel like this here when everyone in a way is a foreigner? So it just puts a different perspective into it. But I do think there are many preconceived ideas of who is an artist that comes to the Arctic. Mm-hmm. And who is an artist that comes to Svalbard. So that we need to break also from, I think. We need many different kind of entries into working here.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's maybe loosely related to what you just said, but I think there's always also important maybe to mention the aspect of translation in your work and how like, also in my work, I think this is something we both do and that we're both interested in, is how when you leave a gap of not explaining, of intentionally letting the audience figure out what it is, you are confronting and challenging the audience into these very like preconceptions of whatever it is, the subject. So that's also very, very interesting, because you are presented with maybe a familiar landscape or a familiar ritual, but then you are also presented with another kind of there's maybe a displacement or something unsettling that it looks familiar but is not quite that thing, you know. So I think that space in between is very, very interesting to work with as artists, and especially when we have all these backgrounds and histories of being in between countries, in between languages, in between disciplines and mediums, you know, in between spaces. So I think that's it is.
And that's something I see also so present. I guess we go into it, but like in your work, that is this, you know, that is also this of mixing different landscape, different locations, but also it is something familiar, but then something is a little bit off, you know, like also in your public installation, like what happens if you can kind of perceive it, you can understand, but something is off, you know, like I think that also puts the spectator in this position where you can't just own it, you know, and I think that's also this idea of translation and mixing of languages, or also visually, like not allowing the audience to 100% own it, but you can also feel you're invited in, but it's something off.
Yeah.
And I think translation and languages is something both of you have worked a lot with. And just one example from one of Maritea's productions, I Want to Be Traditional, is that there's a continuous script with flowing sentences, but mid-sentence it will swap from English, Norwegian, Spanish, and in between those three languages. And then Bianca, you've also worked with signage. Maybe you can share a little bit about the different languages you worked with and I can talk about this project. It's titled How the Land Lies, and well, most of my work is very collaborative. So I work a lot with input from other people, from groups and communities in different places. And in this specific piece, we were interested. So we started by looking at language and the language of power and the language of borders. So this piece is a performance that tours in different countries, and in every country we work with a different cast of performers. And this cast is a group of people that have recently moved to that specific place. So all in the group are migrants with different migrant statuses. So some came through family, some came through work, some came as refugees. So different histories and different stories as well. And then we create a text together, which is we start with a language that comes from the bureaucracy of immigration and visa interviews and like the language of border patrol and border spaces. And so the language starts quite dry, like quite exclusionary and quite dominant. But then we work with them in a way that every performer includes their own mother tongues. So we change this text into some kind of poetry that is multilingual, and it changes in every performance because, you know, then suddenly we have people from Iraq and from Mexico and from Brazil, from Japan, from all places. And then so the piece is also constantly changing, and so they change this text and include
bits and pieces of their own stories. Like we always have a set of questions, like what's your favorite the food from your home country, what's your favorite a piece of your favorite song, or like this kind of questions that they answer, and it becomes a sort of collective poem. And then this text is playing on these electronic billboards, like LED signs that are scrolling. You've probably seen them in like shops and different like signages that are just scrolling text all over. So it's a piece where these languages are sort of coexisting, and they're also kind of transforming and challenging this language of exclusion. So to question, how our spaces are constructed through language, and borders are constructed through language, and how do we perform them, and how also through performance we have the power of breaking them. So I think it's
and also the power to sort of put the audience in a perspective of privilege, where they know what's being said, or to play with that, to take it away, and to shift it from one group to the other. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Maritea? Because you've worked with this so much, with many productions.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, this year, actually, it feels like a long time ago, I also made a piece that resonates a lot with your saying. But because usually I work in performance, as in this work, with my own body, in a way, like I'm present there. But I made a piece this year called Ord, like word, that basically is also around language. It's the first time it's the subject too. So it's 3 women that are hadn't performed before, from Chile, Sudan, and Thailand, and with various mother tongues. So they were learning Norwegian, and we had a team also that spoke various languages. So we didn't have like a common language. That was also really interesting, both as the subject of the piece to mix the languages, but also how do you create, and I guess you've come up with some of the same challenges I can imagine in your project, like how to create something together when we don't speak the same language. And I just think that's something really that we also need to do more, because in society we don't always speak the same language, no? And just a little funny story with that is that, especially with one of them that spoke very little Norwegian, we booked like a translator, but that came at the end. So we were going to help us translate, but then we realized that didn't work, because we already made our own language, so we could communicate and understand each other better than if someone else would come in and try to translate. So that's, but in I think all my work, almost least in this one, because there is less language, it's a mix, a constant mix, and I think it hasn't come from an interest in language. It has come from being multilingual and working with text vocally. So my entry to text has been that I performed and I speak texts. So I remember when I did a piece and someone asked me afterwards, was like, that was just when I finished studying, like in 2010, they were like, oh, but who wrote the text? And I remember being like, huh? I guess I did, because I never thought of it as write a text. It was just part of, I'm performing and I'm saying these words, no? So, and then if you're brought up multilingual, you do mix between languages. So then also in my work, I mix a lot of languages because of that, but because of people being curious about it and be like, maybe there is something in it. But life is multilingual, like people are multilingual. So, so in this work, in the video, it's also been interesting for me. I mean, there is the text at the end, but also what happens if I take away this spoken language and the images can also speak for themselves has also been an interesting journey for me. I mean, I know you do both also, no? Like, like with the spoken language and without, or with the written text, or... Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that also is a kind of translation in itself, because then you I think also like you have the 3-channel video installation, which is quite dominant in the exhibition, and then you have the photographs, which also like relate to them. So even if it's not a literal translation, we are also working in this constant shift of forms and mediums, and how one thing reverberates another and opens up another box, and then you end up creating this this sort of pool and landscape of same interest and same theme and everything, but through different forms. So,
and I think that's something, I don't know, like that maybe we carry both from coming, I mean, I come more from theater, experimental theater, you're from choreography, but when working with live work, then like with performance, there's so many elements when you make a stage piece that also gives you this whole pool of possibilities when going into the visual arts, you know, like, because it's a very, I think the performing art is a very kind of complete art form, not meaning complete in better words, but that you have so many elements and so many also, you have also people working with different expertise, like you have scenography, you have light, you have sound, you have the room, you have the audience, you have the direct contact, you have the text. So it's, I think we both also work with what, if you take sometimes some of those elements, sometimes all, into creating work, that you have kind of the freedom to create in visual arts. Because in visual arts you don't have, I sense there's more freedom to use these elements in whatever way you want.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know if freedom is the right word.
Yeah. No, I see what you mean. And I also think that also to just trust that we don't have to have full control of that. Sometimes the mistranslations and the like when there is a gap in language, there is actually a potential there where something really, really interesting can come out. So to also just trust that space of not fully defining and not fully knowing. I mean, I can give just a quick example of that because now I'm working on a new project and I'm working with a group of Palestinian people in Finland who are practicing dabke, which is a traditional dance, not only from Palestine, but from the whole Levantine region. And it's very interesting because, I mean, the group is very multicultural. So there are a few Palestinians, a few Lebanese, a few people from Syria, and then there is a few Finnish people as well who joined the group to dance and to show solidarity. And then there are kids who just moved to Finland, so they don't know they don't know English, they know some Finnish, they know Arabic, and then this group is sort of like dancing, and then there is me and Laura, who, like, I'm from Brazil and Laura's from Italy, and we are trying to make a work together, and then there are so many mistranslations and so many like moments where one is telling the other, also because dabke is practiced that, like, even though it's one dance, they are practiced differently depending on the country where you come from. So then there is different ways of holding hands, and then the kid is like, no, but I don't do this like this, I do it like that. And then one says in Finnish and the other answers in Arabic, and then the other says in English. And it's just like sometimes a complete chaos of information. But then, there is a moment where in that gap something happens and we're like, okay, this is... let's keep this, and this could not have probably happened if we all just spoke one language only, So I think, that is like also a place for potential.
Yeah, and also a translation between languages, but also medium of dance and into whichever medium you're working on for this new work. We spoke a little bit when we prepared for this talk about the translation from real-time performance or performance with an audience and no documentation. And the kind of politics around documentation, but also the kind of what you both have backgrounds with audiences and performances in a completely different way from video documentation or just video works. But I wanted to ask you both about the kind of particular care you have for the body of the spectator, which in Maritea's case, if you've all seen the exhibition, you've probably noticed that there's a few places to be extremely comfortable in the black box, but also on these sheepskins that are in the space. And I wanted to ask Bianca especially about the kind of conscious approaches to the body of the audience, the body of the spectator, and how you've worked with that, perhaps through what you call choreographed spaces or hard architectures, and what happened to them when you work with them in exhibition settings.
Yeah, I feel like, so because I come from choreography first, and I started with visual arts later in life, I feel like I've always had a very big interest for how spaces are constructed and what kind of environment you create for your audience. So even if I am doing sculptures or installations, I feel like the spaces of my exhibitions are quite choreographed in a way. And I also have been working a lot with the physical aspect of like barriers and obstacles and borders that we find in public space, and working with materials that come from border spaces as well, and putting them in an exhibition space as sort of blockades or barriers that the audience has to sort of pass through. So to also, in a way, it's also important to do it gently, because the audience is you want to care for your audience, and you want to invite them into a space of reflection and of awareness, but also sometimes creating that space of tension where the audience becomes aware of their power and their choices, and that those choices matter in a way that we are not just passive spectators. We are active in creating the spaces that we inhabit, and that really matters when we are talking about society.
And would a concrete example of that be, for example, the tilting bollards in Tromsø?
Okay.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. Okay. So the tilting bollards, they are my very, very last work that I did. It's in Tromsø. It's my very first public art commission, permanent public art commission. So it's there for a very long time. So if you ever go to Tromsø, you can check them out. They are in the main street, Storgata. And my task or my assignment was quite special, because I was assigned an area that is the end of the main street, and this street is a pedestrian street, and then it ends where like the road for cars start. And in that intersection, the municipality was planning to install bollards, which are anti-terror devices for preventing cars from like going into the street. And then my first thought was like, okay, I have to talk about that, because I mean, if my work is so much about borders, and this is an actual physical border that is planned to be installed here, and also what does it mean? Like why this increasing need for barriers and obstacles in public space and security and defense, and all this the hostility that it creates in the public arena. I was interested in thinking about that. So my work, very briefly explaining, is I chose to change these bollards structurally. So I asked the engineers that instead of vertical posts, that they are 6 that they were planning to be installed, and I didn't have a say. I couldn't say don't install them, so I had to work with them. So I said, okay, maybe instead of them being vertical, we can make them tilting progressively towards the ground, so they are kind of like falling down in an angle, and they are sort of like in the street. They because they are tilting to the sides, they're opening up kind of like a portal, and then I created sculptures that are leaning on them, or that are sort of pushing them into the ground, like abstract sculptures that sort of creates these bodily relationships between them and the bollard, relationships of care or of support to sort of like take this very masculine, stiff, upright, straight bollards and then like just soften them up, and it looks like they're just like giving up, you know, like they don't want to prevent an accident. And then there are these integrated lights on them, because normal bollards, they do have lights that are signaling like stop and go for the cars, but then I thought to take those lights and to program them. During the year, these lights, they are programmed to reflect the sunset and sunrise times of Tromsø. So when the sun goes down, the lights go up. And when the light goes up, the sun... Oh, yeah, that. And once a year, they are blinking the migration statistics numbers of that year in Tromsø. So they're also reflecting how many people have moved in and how many people have moved out. So they are markers for these other kinds of movements. So like in this way, if you're passing by in that kind of work, the audience is just the passers-by and whoever is using the city. But I guess you do, when you pass that area, you're gonna think like, okay, what are these weird like it does not look like they are here to make the streets safer at all, you know. It's just
but they still function.
Function, yeah. And people have commented that because they are tilting, it looks like if a car wants to pass, they're just like going away, like trying to, go away from the car. So yeah, it is like this. I think to make the audience, or to create that space where the audience can see their surroundings in a different way, that they can see that things can be otherwise, and that that familiar object is actually not what it's supposed to be, you know? I think that is, yeah.
You wanted to say something
about this? I mean, maybe just this of the, because I think a word that comes up a lot, that I also use a lot, and I think in the art world now, or in the world, this word of care. And also how I've been thinking about how, I know some people maybe are critical to it as like a tendency in the art world now, that that some people, I've heard, kind of see it as, you know, art that is should be controversial. It should push it to, you know, like it should push the audience to its limits, etc. And that this very awareness of care is kind of the opposite to that. But I disagree, because I think it's very different to think, how do I potentially want, again, to set a space for, or to the audience to read or to feel the physicality of the bodies that will meet the work, you know, like it's very different to be aware of that than making work that is not also challenging or pushing boundaries, etc. You know, like I think we are in a time now where also more artists are thinking around this, like what is the physicality of my audience, or when entering the work. And so for me, in this work, but also in others, like it's not present all the time, but it's also this: what happens if you put like some photos lower down, like so people could sit down, or you could stand and look down at it. You know, as kids always have to look up. What happens if we have to look down? Or what happens if someone wants to sit? Or what happens if you lay down? So it's more like to give these possibilities to interact physically in a different way to the work. I think it's also kind of creating this space where you can also perceive the work differently. You know, like it's very clear with the sleep, then you are in a different physical, like mental state too. But I also think is it light? Is it dark? Is there a lot of space? Is it warm? Is it cold? Can you sit? Can you lay down? It's things I'm very interested in thinking about, and that I think it's very different for each work. Like I've been to a lot of exhibition, for example, where there's a video that I'm not prepared for it being like a very, very long video in a space where it's really nowhere for me to sit or to be, and I don't have the time and I don't have the patience, and there are too many works, you know, like, so then I'm like, oh, why was this video here and not in the cinema? You know, like just questioning continuously. Or I've seen a lot of performances about like, care, etc., blah blah, but sitting on really uncomfortable chairs, you know, like. But these things I think are important, and that's something I think we're both kind of thinking around, like how do I move around in this space? How do I look at my surroundings? It opens up for a lot, like endless possibilities, I guess.
Yeah. We've talked for an hour.
Yeah.
Any last words from you before we wrap up here in the spotlight?
I mean, I just wanted to say also regarding this last topic of care, I always felt that you care so much for your audience, you know, like also when I went to see Sleep Locks the Bones in Oslo, I remember being very tired that day, and sometimes performances, you never know what to expect, really, like they can be super demanding, and then I remember my tiredness was just gone, because from the beginning, when we meet you, before you enter the space, we are sort of creating this moment together. You're sort of like synchronizing the energy with the group, and then you enter this room, which is you have this warm blanket and you're allowed to sleep. I mean, how great is that? You know, like it's really, I feel like it's really powerful what it does to you as an audience, and I also feel like here, it's just, I feel like it takes some sensibility to understand that, how to create that space. So I think that's really nice to see in your work.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Liv, really. For guiding us. Thank you.
Okay, but thank you so much, both Bianca and Maritea, for sharing so generously from your own practice and being curious about each other. And thank you to the audience for your patience and excellent energy. And I know some are maybe a little bit tired because it was there were rumors that somebody went to the pub after the exhibition opening. But yeah, thank you, and a big applause for the artists.
Thank you.